So we're speaking with Klaus Flouride, who is the bass player and all-out member of the Dead Kennedys throughout their history. And we're talking to him a little bit about the history of the album Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. Klaus, what are some of your memories around this time about putting the record together?
Well, seed of the record was when we had California Uber Alice released, and then Fast Records, I think, picked it up in the UK, and it did fairly well. And then we had some people approaching us about doing a tour, but they said, you can't do a tour on the strength of a single. So get an album together, and we said, well, we can't get an album together, we can't afford it, And so then they worked. I think it was Bill Gilliam was the person that was our manager in the UK at that point, or took managing duties, and he got us in touch with Ian McKay, not the one that's not
the Fugazi Minor Threat,
not the Fugazi guy, but the other one. And he was the owner of Cherry Red, and they said they pay us. They pay for the recording, and they sent us a check for, I think it was $9,000, and we recorded it for something like 6,000 or something, and then split the rest of it between us because we thought we'd never see anything from the record, and or see anything again. So we just said, okay, we got $3,000, woohoo! And the record came out, and then it did fairly well, and Cherry Red was pulling singles off of it left and right. So and Holiday in Cambodia had also been recorded and re-released by Cherry Red out there as a 45. It's a different recording it's a different version than what's on Fresh Fruit.
Those versions from the singles, they're different on Fresh Fruit, but those versions eventually made their way to Give Me Convenience.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So in Fresh Fruit, Cherry Red put it out in the UK, and that was the first availability of that of the Fresh Fruit LP. How long was it between when Cherry Red had it to where there was a domestic US release, I believe on IRS Records?
It was under a year. I know that. We did the tour. It made the tour possible, so we did the tour. I think we had played a place in Berkeley called Barrington Hall, which was a co-op dormitory for UC Berkeley. And we played there a couple of times. And one time, I think the police were in town, or at least Stuart Copeland and his brother Miles Copeland, who is from IRS, was there. And they got interested in putting us on IRS. Just a little aside on that, IRS, I don't know if you know the whole story about the police, and the group is called the Police. The drummer's father was, not the drummer, Stuart Copeland's father was a CIA agent. And Miles Copeland, the booking company for them was FBI Booking. And so it was the Police, FBI, and IRS was their label. And then IRS in the States was under the umbrella of A&M Records. So when we signed, basically, they came out. Miles Copeland came out to, who ran the label, came out to the UK to watch us play. I think he turned up at our first and our last show of a tour out there. And he basically signed us, and I think we got the papers to sign when we were back in the States. And then A&M is Alpert and Moss, Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss. That's where they get their initials from. And Jerry Moss, as it turned out, used to go leafleting and worked for the grassroots level of the Robert Kennedy presidential campaign back in '68. And so when he saw this thing of Dead Kennedys coming across his desk, he sent out a very heavy duty thing to everybody at IRS saying, I don't want to know about this group. I don't want them on our label. I don't want to see another posted about this group. I never want to hear about it again. And so they called us up and they said, well, we're going to have to, break your contract, or, they said, we're going to have to let you loose. And we said, no, we have a contract. And they said, well, what's it worth to you and we had just, the Sex Pistols had just gotten something like $350,000 from EMI. And we were thinking of something along that line. And they said, no, we can work something else out, I'm sure. And what we worked out was that Faulty Records was one of their subsidiaries in the UK only. And they agreed to put us out eventually the rest of our stuff on Faulty. If we agreed, if they agreed to let us have access to Faulty and Faulty America, and put a bunch of artists that we wanted on it and sign a bunch of people ourselves, which kind of really sank the company because I think we signed like 60 people or something. And there was no way they could be promoted properly, and it's just our naivety. And so Faulty went under, and a person there gave us a warning that they were going under, which was a nice gesture on their part in a way, because we could go there and pick up all the records that they had pressed up and could start Alternative Tentacles up again, because Alternative Tentacles was what was originally the first label for California Uber Alice as a single. Big Hole 45, not the little, small spindle one. I'm not sure exactly how they changed the labels, or maybe you can, I'm not sure how that was done, but anyhow, we had a lot of our own stock and we could re-release it and blah, blah, blah. The orange cover was a big mistake. We said to them very clearly that we wanted this photograph, which we basically bought the rights from the San Francisco Chronicle to use, of the burning black and white cop cars. We wanted to have orange, the flames be like red or orange. Dark
You want
orange
to look like
or red.
flames, because it's a very stark black and white.
And then they painted, and they just made the whole thing a light at that orange print, and it just orange and white, and it just looked awful. We were furious when we got it. Anyhow, the next release, the front cover is at least changed to black and white instead of orange and white. But that was just a big mistake on the printer's part, and then the record was pressed at the wrong speed.
So the cherry red release of Fresh Fruit in the UK was the first release, and then the IRS version was released in the US perhaps 6 months later or something like that, with that orange strange cover. How many copies of that orange cover were released?
I'm not sure exactly. I'm not sure what the first run was. Maybe like 5,000.
Okay.
And maybe more, maybe less. I don't know. That's something that Ray was following more closely and would have or Biafra would have a better, or even a guy named Mike Banana, who was a manager of AT, might know how many we had on that first run, but he wasn't really around with us by the time we had the first run. But because he took over AT as management, he might have some knowledge of it just from that. But yeah, it wasn't a huge run because they didn't know what it would do. And then we had more pressed up, and when they were pressed up again, it had the different cover. But it's fairly rare with the orange and with the back cover having the heads on it and stuff.
Yeah, interestingly, you bring up the back cover. With the now, there's multiple back covers, as many of the listeners or Dead Kennedys fans will know. The back cover of Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables has had many variations. Klaus, can you take us through a bit of a chronology and kind of why that is?
Well, the first version was the orange cover and then the back cover had the orange pattern with the photo of black and white photo of a band that I had doctored already. I found that photo at a garage sale.
And I should probably share the photo. And maybe I have to be careful about how I say this, but it looks like a very corny band.
Yeah, I thought it was some band from the '60s, just from the beehive hairdo and stuff like that, and the kind of pompadours the guys had and things. And it didn't have any name on the photo. It was a publicity photo, but it didn't have a name of the band or a contact number or anything. It was just, I don't know in what ways they used it, but I found it at a garage sale. It was pristine condition, and we first used it for a poster for the first gig that we played without 6025, and so it's when you had press type. You remember press type?
No, I don't. But
sheets of stuff. It was plastic, clear.
Oh, that you rub on. You rub the letters on. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Right. It's called press type, and it was one was symbols, all symbols. So it had like the symbol for wear ear protection, it's just a head with headphones. So we doctored it up, and I said the new improved Ed Kennedys on a poster, and then I put the Kennedys and the alternative tentacles, skull and crossbones, and everything like that on it. We used that picture that had been already diddled with as the back cover, and we thought we were fine with it. And then it got reviewed in some small paper in Los Angeles. They printed the back cover as the photo profile for the record, the picture from the back cover.
So if you look at the back cover of Fresh Fruit, you have this picture of this funny band, and people would, well, I don't know how many people would do this, but it seems like some people assumed that this was the band photo.
Yeah, the people at least that reviewed it in L.A. did, and the band somehow that's on that picture saw the review and went berserk and got in touch with our manager somehow or another, our attorney at that point, and said, we're a Christian group and we're called the Sounds of Sunshine. The likeness of us on your record is just going to damage us immensely. And the picture was actually taken in the 70s, which astounded me. Mm-hmm. So this is 79 or 80 that they got in touch with us. And they sued us for something like at least $1 million. It might have been like $3 million or something. And we worked out an arrangement where we paid them $3,000. We finally nutted it down to $3,000, and we'd removed their likeness from the back cover. At which point they were happy, they got some money, and we were off the hook pretty. And
maybe you should have tried to get him a record contract over at A&M Records. Well, maybe they would have settled for that.
The funny thing is the way we got them to sort of back down is we found out through discovery that they had recorded at the Wall of Voodoo recording studio. And we're thinking, well, what would your Christian-based audience think about you recording at the Wall of Voodoo recording studios? I mean, if this is going to become a news story, let's make some news out of it. You get you guys some real publicity. And so then suddenly it wasn't too hard to.
So they went from $1 million to $3,000,
yeah,
and then
to remove the likenesses, we just chopped their heads off.
So now there's a series of records out there, like second or third pressings, that still have the band photo, only they're without their heads.
Yeah. And then it's fun because when we go out and tour, some people have that album, and if we're signing, we go out after every show and meet people that come and pay to see us. We like to meet and talk to. Mm-hmm. So, and we go out and sign stuff, and now it's a lot of selfies and things. That cover with the heads taken off, I take the advantage of, and draw different faces on the top. So that's fun too. Do a little cartooning after the show.
So the band, The Sounds of Sunshine, they then saw the headless portion, and they weren't happy with that necessarily either.
I found a record in a thrift shop bin of The Sounds of Sunshine. And I'm not sure it's the same Sounds of Sunshine or what, but it was just mostly, I can't remember exactly what it sounds like, but it wasn't Christian rock at all. It was just, easy listening music.
So there's the version, there's the back version that has the band with their heads.
Right.
Then there's the version of the band without their heads.
And then there's the Winston Smith version, where the
Oh,
women in the back seat of the car, I think.
yeah. And you guys were all clear that you had the rights to that picture. There was no.
Oh yeah, we worked with Winston from the next record on, from In God We Trust King Khan,
Mhm.
and so he did all the covers through Frankenchrist.
There's actually a fourth version of that back cover. And I think it said temporary. It was like a warning sign.
That's right. It said it just had like a stamp cross diagonally across it that said something like to be.
Yeah, stay tuned or something.
Yeah, something like that. I can't even remember.
Okay, so the real collectible one, the one that people like to look for, is the one with the band and with their heads on the back.
Yeah, that's the real collectible. Yeah.
Yeah. On the IRS version, it doesn't have the same etchings in the runout groove as the original Cherry Red. I believe in the original pressing out of the UK, there's very funny etchings in the runout groove that says like, "Well, who are the brain?"
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Where did that idea come from, and who did that?
Oh, I think Biafra came up with the exact phrases. I mean, and that was quoting basically Frank Zappa, the Brain Police, from the Freak Out album, I think it was. Lots of groups at that point were doing stuff with the runout groove, and it's fun just to put a little. It was fun for collectors. It's fun if anybody takes some time to look for the matrix number, and it's generally real collectors that find that sort of stuff.
There are two different versions of the Cherry Red one in the UK. I think one says this Frank Zappa reference. Well, who are the real Brain Police?
Yeah,
So the other quotes are, "Is life as boring as you are?"
yeah.
And there's a third one on which was on the second Cherry Red pressing. Sorry to be a bit of a nerd here, but I believe it says, "Do you deserve to live?"
And if so, why should have been on the other side. I got annoyed that it didn't say, have a response in the B side.
So you guys weren't in the room when it was being mastered, but you just told the mastering engineer, "Here's what you write."
Yeah, because he was in the UK at the first one, and then I think it may have been mastered in the US probably by George Horn at Fantasy, or I'm pretty sure that's where we had a lot of stuff done. But still, the speed was, I don't know what was up, if the mastering tape, the masters that we taped, as if the machine was wrong. But when we went to remaster it, we noticed that it was a quarter of a step high for the manifesto thing. And so we took it and just put it back to the right speed for the manifesto. It's the first one that's been released. And I don't know, it must be the master tape was somehow very speeded down. We probably were fooling with stuff, and then it got left that way, or who knows how, or it's so long ago.
So that's interesting. So you're saying every version of Fresh Fruit up until the manifesto releases, which are in 2001 or something, were all.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that that's the situation, and even including the CDs. So I'm thinking the master tape. I never thoroughly talked this through with Ray how that happened to happen with multiple masterings, because they can't use the same stamper, same mother, especially between countries. They wouldn't do that. So each mastering engineer must have worked off the same tape. I mean, some of the versions, like the Italian and Greek versions that came out, were just mastered off of other records.
Well, there's a lot of different albums out there that are mastered at slightly the wrong speed. I believe Miles Davis' Kind of Blue is also mastered at the wrong speed, because the recording console that they recorded just like a quarter note too slow. So they had to actually go back to the master tapes and goof at their speed. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we did with when we remastered it for Manifestos, we pulled it. So it must be the master tape. We pulled it down to where it was in tune with the guitars. We knew which keys we were playing the things in, and we played our guitars against it, and it was wrong. So then we got it back down to the right speed, and it sounds a little more natural, like we sound, and whatever. It sounded like we actually sounded.
Yeah, and it's louder. It's a brighter master on Manifesto.
Yeah, well, just better technology in general is, involved there. We pushed the parameters a little heavier. We used up the whole face of the record instead of having, you can, if you have on a vinyl at least, if you have a set rate, it's going to, like a lot of the old records had huge lead-out grooves as the song was only a minute and a half. And Porky was one of the first people that said, and actually Mitch Miller back with Columbia was the first person to use up the whole face of the record, and you could make it louder because the grooves have more room. And you sacrifice only a little bit of the high end towards the label part of it. But with the rock band, it doesn't hurt that much. Orchestral, you might be noticeable, and Mitch Miller was the head of crappy music at Columbia for a good long time. He's one of the reasons Frank Sinatra left, because Mitch Miller wanted everybody to do novelty records, and Sinatra just said no, But Miller was the first person that realized that it would kick in the compressors on radio stations, but where it really stood out was on jukeboxes, because they didn't have compressors in them or limiters, and his records would just stand out because they were louder. At that point, Columbia was doing that with Dylan, and they kept doing that. I mean, through Dylan and everybody. If it's a short song, they would just crank it.
Right.
And fill out the whole surface. And Porky did that a lot.
So that explains the other etchings in the Run Out Groove, a Porky Prime cut. And
yeah.
Okay. Now, also, early copies of Fresh Fruit came with a poster. Can you tell us a little bit about that poster?
It was basically put together by Biafra. I think he might have had some help with Winston. It's bunches of snippets. It was literally cut and paste. And it's got pictures of each of us in there at some point or another scattered around from early photos of us by people like Ruby Ray and some of the people that were on the scene early on. It was basically a collage on both sides, a four-way fold-out collage.
It's like it's a huge poster for folks who have, and in fact, I'll post
it's
pictures.
Like a six-way fold-out. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll post pictures of all these on the Vinyl Guide Facebook so people who aren't familiar with it can see it. But it's magnificent. It's about 3 foot tall, and
it's two-sided also.
And it looked really fun to put together because it's got newspaper clippings and little images and things that are taken both in and out of context that add humor to one another. So I think that was always...
It's a picture of Pol Pot. I mean, people don't know who the hell Pol Pot is. I have our audience a lot of the time lately, the younger people especially, channeling Pol Pot with us, but it's a rarity to find somebody who's done what we hope people will do more often is what's this Pol Pot? What's that about? And now it's so easy to do it. Just go to Google and Google Pol Pot, and you'll find the history of Pol Pot.
When you guys were making this music, did you realize how important it was?
Well, it was important to us, and that's what we basically were caring about, is that we wanted music to have an interesting message, either amusing, sarcastic, or historically rooted, but always with a sense of humor to it. And the music had to have, I wanted it especially to have a good, strong melody. I was the popster, if you want to say, of the group. And and Ray, had his spooky guitar sounds, and it was just a good combination of people. But we had no idea. Like I said, when we got the original release, we thought that would be it. We thought with our names that when we started it, we thought we'd last 6 months, maybe 2 years tops, and with luck, we'd get to go to LA.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew it was important to us, but we didn't quite grasp how much people would really
How they'd respond
to it exactly.
Yeah.
And it was also aimed a lot towards an international thought process, instead of just aimed at an American audience. We knew that, and it in fact did break us in the United States, was when we went to Europe. And then when we came back back from the European tour, then people turned out. But the first tour we did to the States, and California Borealis was supposed to have been released, and our manager didn't get it to the stores in time. There's about 12 or 15 people at shows, and there were people that back then it was word of mouth and fanzines and stuff that spread the word. But we came back and we were ready to toss the towel in and just say, even before California Borealis was very popular, that we gave it a shot, but wasn't going to work. But we kept slugging at it, and then Biafra decided to run for mayor, and that got us more publicity than we thought it would. And he coming in fourth, and being able to run as Jello Biafra instead of his real name was just odd in its own. I can't believe. I still don't know how that was pulled off.
Well, very shortly thereafter, I believe they changed the laws to where you could no longer do that.
Yeah, I thought the laws were already in place. That was the funny thing. Right? What would stop any fool that wants to get out there on in front of a group of people and not use his own name from doing it?
There's a lot of people out there, and I'm one of them, who I think have been very inspired by Dead Kennedys, and not just the music and the message, but all the entire package, how it comes together. I think if you guys were talking about things like Pol Pot without the humor, or without
it would have just been too strident.
Yeah, that's a heavy thing. But the humor keeps us listening, keeps us into it, and keeps us laughing, even if it's a bit cruel. But it gets the point across much more effective.
Yeah. It was partially a sense of humor mixed in with a sense of the bizarre, because, lots of the stuff was just bizarre. We were attracted to things like the story about the guy who, shot his lawnmower and stuff like that,
or the man with the dogs. Like, I knew a guy like that.
Exactly. That's a perfect, that's from that record. And in fact, that's a good example.
But if you combine kind of that wit or that kind of sarcasticness, but with the songwriting, like "Kill the Poor" is a pop tune. It is
the government of Portugal at that point was pretty much dictatorship and right wing, very much right wing, and apparently got a hold of a wind that that song was released in their country, and the powers that be listened to it and didn't quite digest the fact that we were being, tongue in cheek about the chorus, and sort of pushed the radio stations to play it more, and kind of thought it was a good idea, I guess. And it charted higher in Portugal than any place else, which was like for all the wrong reasons.
So what was your reaction when you heard that?
We were kind of going, Jesus, is this good or bad? Again, it's bizarre. Since that era, we played Portugal and with the Reform group in 2003 or 4, and there were people that still had their copies of the record, but the government had radically changed, fortunately, by that.
one of my questions was going to be what DK song do you feel has been the most misconstrued? But I guess you just answered that.
Yeah, Kill the Poor would be one of them. The fact that, I mean, if anybody takes, it's like, it's a lot of it's metaphorical. And I mean, you can say that about the Bible, but the Bible, I think, has done a lot more damage than we have by people taking it at its face value and not seeing the irony behind some of the lyrics. But our idea with the thing is to make people think and hopefully not tell them what to think, but to get them interested in the subject we're talking about enough that they might go out and look into it on their own and find out more stuff about it.
Sure.
You can reach more people with the humor than you can with force feeding them some sort of crazy, pre-fed, pre-digested. You don't have to think. Just take what we say for face value crap,
Mm-hmm. No, I can attest to that because I had no idea what ketone poisoning was until I heard the song. And okay, what is that something I should be concerned about? Yeah. So, Klaus Flouride, you're on your deathbed, or you're on a ship in the North Atlantic and it's just broke in two. You're at the end of your life. You're thinking about this time, the dead Kennedys experience. What are the memories that go through that make you smile?
Okay, when I was a kid and playing guitar in bands when I was 15, my dad, who had been a musician in the late 20s and early 30s, which I didn't find out how seriously he had been a musician until like 82, because he didn't want to encourage me to try and make a living at this thing. Because he thought, he said to me, there's 3 million boys out there that play guitar and want to, be able to live off of it or become a star or whatever you want to call it. He says, so life is real, get a backup plan. And I played for 15 years before I even got into the Kennedys. And when I got into the Kennedys, it was because I decided I wasn't going to make a living at music, but this punk rock stuff that was coming out was like the original rock and roll that I loved when I was a kid, Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis and stuff that scared your parents. And I like that because the rest of what was calling itself rock and roll or rock at that point was the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac and, proficient musicians that, were mellow and didn't make any waves as such. There are very few people out there that were like the David Bowies and the Iggy Pops and people like that out there. And they were still considered the lunatic fringe, So then when we started connecting and actually drawing crowds, by that point, I could sort of go on automatic pilot and just look at what was going on and remember my dad's words and think, I'm one of those 3 million kids and I'm just fucking lucky as hell to be able to be having this happening, and really appreciate it still to this day whenever we play. That's the most fun part, is wreaking complete chaos, or at least excitable people, and then also talking to people afterwards, the ones that do get it and the ones that want to talk about just what we're talking about now because they've actually gone and really studied what we do and things. That's then you feel like you've made a dent of some sort.
So just being part of that experience, being able to stand back and appreciate that you were there at this particular time. I imagine it wasn't easy at all at the time. It was being
right place in the right time. It was timing. It was luck. And I like to think there was some talent thrown in from all the members of the group that made us, like nobody, there are a lot of bands that sounded like the Ramones or the Sex Pistols. And then there were a few bands that tried to sound, Oingo Boingo tried to sound like Devo, it was like that. There are people that use that template with the new wave edge of things. And, but there are hardly any other bands out there that tried to sound like us, or could. and or cared to.
Hmm.
So our records do stand out as having a different sonic sensibility along with the lyrics and things. That's part of it, is that we don't have a lot of copycats.
Oh, that's for sure. Um, Tell us about a moment. There's a bit of a legendary moment in the DK history. There's many of them, but one of them in particular were the Bammies.
Ah,
And you guys were asked to play the Bammies. And I'll set this up just real quick for people who don't know what the Bammies are. I think that's most of the world. The Bammies, BAM stood for Bay Area Music, and it was a
yeah,
magazine in Northern California that focused just on live shows and musicians that were from like the San Francisco Bay Area, Oakland, that area, Northern California,
yeah.
and
I'll just to fill in for a
oh,
bit. What necessitated, is that the word? I'm not sure.
sure,
What made it what BAM happened was when Rolling Stone left its San Francisco offices and moved to New York. And there was nothing left that would stroke the Jefferson Starship's ego and the Grateful Dead on every issue. And so BAM magazine stepped in, and it was free, and it was just truly so bad that they couldn't sell it. It was always free. They tried to sell it for $1, and their circulation just went down the tubes, and so they went back to being free. And they had their version of the Grammys was the Bammies.
yeah. Only it was so pale in comparison. Like
Oh,
you would get, you would get people like the bass player of Journey
yeah,
slapping the back of the light guy from Jefferson Starship.
yeah. That was basically it. And Carlos Santana and Boz Scaggs and all
Mhm.
a bunch of people like that would. I mean, they were at that show that you're going to get into.
I guess Dead Kennedys were asked to play. California Uber Alles was starting to be popular.
Yeah,
Yep.
and we decided we generally don't like doing what we're told to do. IRS also did that Ergum Music War, and they wanted us to play California Uber Alles, and we knew that's all they'd use on the damn film, and we didn't need to promote that record anyhow. So we did everything but California Uber Alles on that performance, which irked them, but they and also got 3 different songs that they kept shuffling around out there. But they didn't put our name on the soundtrack record, which was kind of funny. Um, Back to BAM though, yeah, they wanted us to play California Uber Alice, and Ted, the original drummer, came in with an idea for a song and written had written a good part of it, and it was called "Pull My Strings," and and we had that chorus, which is my cock big enough, or my brain small enough for you to make me a star, give me a toot, I'll sell you my soul, pull my strings, and I'll go far. Now, the dress rehearsal for that, which was the day before, we dummied down the chorus to "Is my smile big enough or my teeth white enough for you to make me a star?" And then the rest of it was basically the same. And they wanted us to play it all the way through. We'd start off with California Arouse, break down and say, we're not punk, we're new wave and all that. And during the sound check, Carlos and Boz were there, and they were, oh ho ho, they're taking a piss out of us. They're fun. Oh yes, well let them do it. It's harmless.
So,
And
so,
then
so just to clarify, so the band, so people involved in the event actually knew that you were going to do a bait and
they
switch.
knew they knew we were going to pull the switch.
Okay.
Only as of the dress rehearsal day, which is the day before, but they'd already advertised the whole thing with us in it. So they knew we were going to do whatever we fucking pleased. So they kept us on. They didn't know what we were going to do though, and there was a station called Camel, KMEL at that point, that was broadcasting it, and they were pretty much the classic rock station
Hmm.
for the area. And it was Pacific Stereo, I think, was the main sponsor for it. And they kept all the way through the show. They'd go through the Pacific Stereo for commercial. from a remote truck outside the Warfield Theater, which is where it happened. And then when we went into that actual song, our version of it, we're watching the guy over in the corner standing side stage from the radio station, just waving his arms at us like, cut it out, no, 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 and with the hand across the neck, and then seeing that we're just going to play it through. And we had people sing along, and they did, with that chorus. And then the guy sort of, by the time we got off stage, he says, well, don't worry, because it never went on the air, probably. Or it never went on the air, is what he said to us, not knowing that it did go on the air. Because the guys out in the sound truck are probably just smoking dope and going, a little too much kick drum there. Okay. And they're not listening to the lyrics or anything. So it did get out on the air. I had friends or roommates at the house recording it on a cassette. So for the longest time, all we had was the rough mix that they did for the live mix. But it was there, and our master for it was on a cassette. Then came time to do Give Me Convenience. We thought, geez, I wonder if we can wrangle. We were putting together the tape and equalizing all the songs to fit together on Give Me Convenience at the same studio that just so happened to have the master tapes for that BAM show still, 24-track tapes. We were wondering if we could use that, and the studio was nervous about it. They said, well, call BAM Magazine up and see what they say about it. So I put on my managerial fake coat and called them up on the phone and said, I represent Dead Kennedys, and we're at the record plant right now, and we're going to put out a compilation disc of our greatest hits, and we were wondering if what could be arranged for us to use their performance from the BAM program in 1980. And the guys say, we'll call you back in 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, they call back. 3 minutes, they call back. And they say, sure, but under one condition. And we thought they'd have us bleep it or something. And he said, that you mentioned that it was at the BAMmies. And it was BAM Magazine and all this stuff. And we said, no, not a problem. We thought they were going to ask for thousands of dollars. It's nothing. They just make sure, because by that point we were, something that they were happy to have been associated with. So then it got out finally, and a decent mix at that, because we got to mix the whole thing to, our specs. And
so if you look at the copy of Give Me Convenience or Give Me Death, it'll say something about the BAMmies. That was the...
Yeah, that was their only condition.
And there
was no contract signed or anything to do with that. It was just, yeah, go ahead.
Well, that was a great deal for them, because, as we know, the BAMmies have now gone on to international fame and fortune.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody's got that. It's like having Rolling Stone and Spin, which everybody still reads now if you're over 60. And
that's the only time you guys ever recorded that song, Pull My Strings, right? That's the only copy.
So we did one other performance of it at the Mabuhay. And that was the only other time we performed it, was at the Mabuhay, like within a week of the BAMmies. And that was it. And that wasn't recorded, so there were just 2 performances of it.
So glad that was captured. That's a great song. I was listening yesterday, and it's so catchy. It's still...
People still ask us to do it. Yeah, we had the reggae thing. We had the knack part, the My Paola instead of My Sharona. We had... the song of the year was "Shut Up and Dance" by Pearl Harbor and Explosions. So that won the record. So we, of course, yelled "Shut Up and Dance," right before I think it was before the guitar solo.
Yep.
And the guitar solo, Ray went totally. I mean, we followed all Montrose and people like that, and so Ray just did, playing the guitar with his teeth and just this histrionic solo. And we're all sitting there sort of covering our mouths and yawning. That's also where that picture of us with the dollar signs, F. Stop Fitzgerald was the photographer, and he was at the BAMmies. And he got the pictures of us backstage with the dollar signs on the shirts. And we came out and our jackets were buttoned up, and you couldn't see it. And then when we said we're New Wave, we took our jackets off and threw our ties down over the S's that were on our shirts.
Do you know if any video of this exists at all?
Um, I haven't seen any of it. None has surfaced on YouTube, which
The
is
indicator.
indication to me that a Target video wasn't there. I don't think Dirk was involved in doing anything because it wasn't the Mabuhay per se, and I don't think the band people recorded it. And if they have, they haven't said any. Nobody's gotten in touch with us about the existence of the video, so I don't think it exists. I don't think anything. I don't think they did any video of it. It'd be something worth trying to look into again, but to track down the people who were involved in something that happened in 1980 is getting, it's getting become more and more of a cold case.
Yeah, yeah. Has your punk rock past ever come back to haunt you?
Well, not in a harmful way.
Mm.
There were times, that I've had to take when we had after we quit for the first time. I had different day jobs, but it was always people were like, "Oh, you're in the Dead Kennedys? It was cool. I followed you guys back." Most of the people I ended up working for, it's almost always driving jobs. I was delivering stuff, or I worked for DHL for a while, right before we reformed. Our reforming happened pretty much right after 9/11 happened, and I just was taking time off from DHL for the court case for one thing, and they were giving me a lot of time off, and I'd pretty much used all my time off. But after 9/11 happened, it just shut the company down as far as any sort of international shipping for at least a week or two. And then it became impossible to pick up packages because you had to open them up, and it was crazy, and I just wanted out. And it just happened to coincide with the timing of us releasing the first manifesto, the Mutiny on Bay CD, and so and we were going to go. We decided we were going to have a signing party down in Los Angeles at the Key Club, a release party with just a meet and greet. And DH said, "Well, we all agreed that after we get through this whole court case thing, that we should get together and play some music because that's what we were really about, and just to remind ourselves that." And we asked Biafra if he was interested in becoming part of it. He said, "No way, of course." And so then we tried a couple of people, and Brandon Cruz fit the ticket for. We did like 5 songs, I think, or something like that at the show. And the word had spread from people hearing us rehearse in LA at some studio. The word from just people looking through this little porthole in the studio that we were at and seeing it was us, that the Key Club had a line down the block the night of the release party, and there was an agent there. There was a bunch of agents there who were saying, "We can put you on tour." So then we had to teach a whole set to Brandon, and but he took the first bullets for us going out without Biafra, and he handled it pretty well. And then
people were brutal.
Oh, people at the beginning, it was like everybody, for one thing, were believing Biafra's reportage of what the trial was about, which it was supposedly me wanting to do a Levi's commercial, and all it was that Levi's had asked us if they could use music for a commercial, and it was Ray's fiduciary duty, because he was handling stuff like that, to pass the information around. And Ray said, Klaus says it's okay with him, if we take the money, and DH was in a hospital at that point because I think he'd crashed his motorbike or something. And I said, we can use some of it to pay DH's hospital bill off if we do this. But I wasn't pushing to do it. And so Biafra said the whole thing was us being pissed at him over refusing to do a commercial. And all it was he said no, and we said, well, fine, let's not even go into it. But he used that fiction as a smokescreen for what the thing was really about, which was shorting us on royalties for years. And everybody that came out that picketed the shows, there was always a group of kids at the first year or so picketing the shows, and we said, and there can no be dead Kennedys of Biafra, and blah, blah, blah. And we'd say, we don't know anybody in this town. And where are you getting all your information? And he said, well, Biafra, alternative tentacles. And we said, well, if you're going on the logic of if Biafra says so, it must be so, then he's changed this paradigm from think for yourself to telling you what to think. And that's a very shaky shift in the paradigm. And also it became a thing of, okay, you're all on the guest list, because we had basically an unlimited guest list in these towns. And we'd say, come on in and see what you think. And a bunch of the kids would always come up after and say, hey, it was a really good show, So if they had an open mind enough to actually come in, and some kids are, I'm never going to your show. Well, it's your last chance you're going to get for being on our guest list for a free show.
Yeah.
But and that's pretty much been resolved, and hardly anybody does the "Where's Biafra" shouts, and he's still, if he wanted to do it again, Skip would understand. Skip's been playing with us for like over 9 years now, but he'd understand it, but I can't imagine what the rehearsals would be like, and what sort of conditions he'd lay down, because it would be a thing where I think he'd do it with conditions laid down. But he's never taken us up on the offer anyhow, so I'm not expecting that to happen anytime soon.
Have you ever?
If you ever called me up and said, Klaus, I don't know what we were thinking, let's get together and have a drink and talk about when we first released Fresh Fruit and how buzzed we were and stuff, I'd be there, but that's not happened.
When's the last time you've had a conversation, even a happy birthday or hi, how you doing? I hope you're well.
It's been 15 years or so. It's we're not even allowed to talk directly to him. It's our manager has to talk to his attorney for us to get stuff back and forth, just even for releasing, licensing stuff and things like that. Because he's part of the partnership still. We have a partnership, and he's one of the 4 partners. So, and we do everything straight and above the board and fair. But calling him directly is just, it's the point of, asking for it anymore.
Well, I'm sure there are millions of people out there who didn't think it could happen for bands like Guns N' Roses or Van Halen. We would love to see you guys at least one. Not even, maybe it's not even play a show, but at least be able to see you all in one place, perhaps accepting a BAMI. That would be great.
It's interesting though. There's lots of people who'd like to see it. I like a lot of the stuff he's done since the band. I'm not thinking that any of it is over the top better than the Kennedys was, but neither is that. We've written some stuff, especially Ray and I have gotten together, and we're getting together in a couple of more weeks to actually toss around some ideas for new songs. But until it's something that can stand up scrutiny against Fresh Fruit, we've introduced a couple of new songs on tours at one point, and it's hard to. Everything is measured against Fresh Fruit, and even our later albums.
But I think that's a bit of a dangerous water. That's almost like saying, well, if I can't do the same number of push-ups that I could when I was 25.
Yeah. Well, I mean, still, we don't want to just knock off something with 3 chords and snarky lyrics and call it. It's got to have something going for it, and we've had a couple that we thought were good, but it's kind of like the PIL thing where they went out, this is what you want, this is what you get. If people expect us to go over the same exact territory again, we're not about to do that. But it's got to be something that satisfies us also. So, and we're getting closer on it every time we get together. So, when people in the 90s would ask me, are the Kennedys ever getting back together or playing as Dead Kennedys again? I would say, it'll be a snowstorm in hell before you see that. And then we got back together, minus Biafra, but we still basically, we've been touring on and off for 15 years now. And so I learned to never say it won't happen, never say never sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, so
as long as you guys are comfortable with the music, I mean, if you allowed people to vote on what band name you would have had, it wouldn't have been the Dead Kennedys. So, same sort of thing with the songs. It's like, if that's what you're feeling, if that's what you're going to put out, then put it out.
We went out, when we first went out, we went out as the DKs, with DK, which was fine with Biafra and it was fine with everybody else. But the promoters always put Dead Kennedys on the things, and we said, no, don't do that. And they'd not only put on Dead Kennedys, but they'd put up pictures with Biafra, which we really told them expressly not to do because it's false advertising. But they would do it, and we'd find out after the fact. We'd get to the town and see. And then it became easier to check up on that when the internet became more of where you could go to some club's, site and see what they're using for a visual. And if they're using an old picture, to take it down, you're in breach of the contract, blah, blah, blah. Well, you won't play if you have that up there because we don't like to be telling people lies about what's going on,
So just on a side note here, and I know you've been very generous with your time. Thank you very much, Klaus. Real quick, you're a record collector as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about the collection that you have?
It started when I was 6, which was over 12 years ago at least. And it's carried on. It sort of blossomed when I found out about estate sales. But I started getting 78s when I was in my 20s, basically taking them from my parents' house and some of the stuff I grew up with. And my dad had a really good collection, and he had a bunch that he had kept away from me when I was a little kid. It was on the top shelf in his closet, and I hadn't heard them for years, and he finally let me have those. Or he let me hear them, but he still kept them until he died. And then I got to, being that I was the only person that had a record player that could play 78 still, by default I got them. But he had some great stuff, and that really got me going. And so I have like 5,000 78s, another 5,000 LPs, thousands of CDs, there's reel-to-reel tapes, projects I've worked on, stuff I found at thrift shops, 99% of which when you bring it home, it's somebody's recordings of their Creedence Clearwater records or Fleetwood Mac or something. But every once in a while, it's something like therapy sessions or families that would record their arguments. And it was just like stuff that I'm always meaning to use snippets of for, some sort of musical thing where you can just stick it in there. And have yet to do that. It's constantly working on my own solo stuff and going to release something hopefully before I die. And I'm working on compilation of the stuff I've already released. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, yeah, I've got every format just about, including mini discs and everything.
Wow. And what are some of the, I guess, the prized ones that you have? Aside from the stash that your dad gave you.
I have a reel-to-reel tape that I recorded when I was recording a group called Radio King and His Court of Rhythm when I lived in Boston. They were playing at a place in Beverly, Massachusetts. And I can't remember the name of the place. Sandy's was the name of the place. And the opening act was the Sidewinders. And Billy Squier was in that. And I had played with Billy Squier in 1969 in a group called Magic Terry in the Universe. And here was Billy again. I didn't know he was going to be in the I'm not sure. Each band did 2 sets, and I was there to record Radio King, but I asked the Sidewinders if I could record them too, and Bill said sure. And Jonathan Richman was in the audience, and so he got up and sang Roadrunner with the Sidewinders, and that's one of my favorite things that I have, that outside of a copy that I gave to Jonathan Richman when I saw him playing in the mid '80s, nobody else has got. And I thought he might release it. The Sidewinders were on RCA, and RCA deemed the fidelity not releasable, so they didn't put that out, the live version. But it's pretty good, actually. For bootleg standards, it's great.
So you were in a band with Billy Squier,
Yeah,
Magic Terry in the Universe. What? When's the last time you talked to Billy Squier?
Billy, it's been a long time. It might go back to the '70s, but Magic Terry himself is a friend on Facebook. So is the rhythm guitarist. We email each other. The drummer lives in San Francisco, and I see him every couple of years or so, and we do some jamming and stuff.
It sounds like there's a higher chance of you getting back together with Billy Squier in the band.
Terry's kind of. I don't think that would happen either, because everybody's so scattered far and wide. I mean, as it is, when the Kennedys are singers in New York, or the drummers in L.A., and Ray and I are in the San Francisco Bay Area. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So, look, I know you've been very generous with your time, and I could probably talk to you for another couple hours. There's so much, but I do want to give you a bit of a break. Maybe I will at some point reach out and say, hey, can you let's hear some more of that history, because you've really lived a fascinating life, Klaus, and the work you've been involved in is remarkable. I think it's certainly inspired me. I think I'm one of those people who got a glimpse of some of the work that you were involved in with the Dead Kennedys, and it made me very curious. It broke me out of that suburban crocus and into kind of really thinking more for myself. I would cite the Dead Kennedys and probably Bad Religion and Bill Hicks.
It's not Dead Kennedys, it's Dead Kennedys. Dang it.
Oh, it's not it's Dead. Okay, sorry. I would cite
No,
Dead
sorry,
Kennedys.
I understand it. Just give me a hard time.
The Bad Religion, the the Frank Zappa, as some of the people who really kind of made me think the way I am, and I think hopefully I'm passing that on to my kids, and more people are helping hone their bullshit meter by listening to this sort of music. It's still very relevant.
Yeah, I know, and we get people at shows that are like, there's like this cross of at least 3 generations now. I mean, kids are coming with their grandparents, and the grandparents saw the first. I saw you in 1981 and such and such. Do you remember me?
Yeah.
But,
it's still very relevant. I mean, you could just substitute Pol Pot for ISIS, or you could substitute these things. And unfortunately, that's still happening. But
I know, that's the thing, is that we have the unfortunate
parallels.
The unfortunate pleasure of still having the world be even more fucked up than it was then. So
we'll use that as an opportunity to also share that the entire Dead Kennedys discography is still available.
It's on Manifesto on vinyl and CD, and I think downloadable now. And also, there's a 45 box set that I think there's still, all the singles were remastered and released, and I think that's still gettable. Just don't download it off of a bootleg for free thing, because don't do that to any musicians.
Right.
Musicians or artists are really being killed by the internet, in a way, by people just saying it's free, it's on the internet.
That's one good thing about the audience that listens to us here, is they invest in music. They need the physical vinyl to be able to. So all that is still available, and like I said, unfortunately they're still relevant, but they still kick ass.
Yep.
So thank you very much for spending time with us, Klaus. We do appreciate it.
Okay. Nice talking to you.